Hello everybody, this is Jeremy Tail within the DAW. Welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be taking a look at RapidComposer 4. This is a very powerful piece of software that, to be honest, cannot be done justice in just one or two videos. So this review is going to be broken down into several segments. This first one is going to be taking a look at just getting started. Let's create something in a few minutes, and we'll focus on orchestral music. And then in the other video, we'll focus on more synthesizers and electronic music. And then after that, we're going to just do a whole bunch of video series explaining how this whole thing works. Because you have lots of tabs, lots of options, phrase editors, a melody editor, MIDI mutators. You have so many options that it just leaves you with too much to bite down in one or two sittings. And then there's the fact you can come in here and generate entire variations, rhythms, and generators, save them, harmonize them. You pretty much have full options. And it's not just that. In the composition section, you have phrase editing, note editing, idea tools, phrase envelope editors. You have so much options. It's basically a fully functioning composition software. And we're using it as a VST today, but it is a standalone software that works completely by itself with no DAW needed. I'm just using it inside of Studio One. So if anyone asks, yes, this is VST and VST3, Mac and PC. It can host plugins and sync with your DAW. So let's get started. We're just going to start a brand new composition. So I want to show you how this works. It starts off like this. You have pretty much always set up in C major. You have your sections on your left, which is your playback section, your editors on the top, and then your channels. So for this, I'm going to set up a couple of channels just right off the bat. And since this is being used as a plugin, if I right click, you'll see that each channel has its own output channel. So it's actually going to trigger different libraries that I have inside of Studio One. We're going to name this one to be my chords. The next one is going to be my strings. And then this one, I believe, will be mallets. And we might have time, we might not, to do bass. Okay. The next thing is, if you're seeing this little scroll section, your middle C is right here. So if you double click, you will always be brought back to middle C. And this is going to show you the different octaves that you have available. When you drag and drop MIDI into this section, it actually allows you to move it up and down octaves. So instead of, let's say, changing the chord that it's playing, it's actually just changing the octave, which is really cool. And let's go to our master track. Now, when you right click on this, you have these little pop-up menus, the gear icon and the little properties section. This is where you're going to really determine what you're going to be doing in this session. I'm going to change this to note names, and I'm going to change my scale. I'm going to go for a minor scale. And that would either be done here, where you have this gigantic selection of scales, or right here where we have some very popular ones. Now we have harmonic minor, and this is really cool, but here's where you get into some more technical stuff. You have a chord rules section, which will determine what are the rules for the MIDI in this section. Now we have some already preloaded in, and I actually really like the Bach harmonic minor. But if you go into your chord rules editor, you would actually be able to see the chord rules spread out in detail, and you can edit and create your own chord rules. So let's say you're in a scale that you've invented. You could actually program it in and save it so that you can auto-generate chord progressions based off of that chord rule. So we're going to be using the Bach harmonic minor just because they usually sound really good. And I want to extend this out. So if you hit this little tab, you can extend this out. We're going to go for 16 bars. And boom. And now we hit another snag. Everything is just F minor for like 14 bars or something, 13 bars. So if you hit Alt, you can actually have separations, which can do subdivisions. But for the sake of time and the sake of simplicity, we are just going to separate this for a chord for every bar. Now, I said we're going to auto-generate stuff. There's many ways to do it. But one of the easiest ways is to select the chord, shift-click on the rest of them, and you hit the dice. Now, this will randomize things based off of what is your selected scale and your chord rules that you've selected. So let's say I do a different chord rule. It might have stuff that's not in scale or not in this key. Now you'll notice you have different color schemes. The darker green that's kind of bright is closest to the root note, and more close towards deep red is farthest away. So this is almost out of key, but it still works. And the reason why I like to have it set up like this for my note names or chord names is because I get to see if there's any really annoyances, like, hey, this section might be repeating too much. That looks okay, but I just want to have a little bit of variation. And I think that might work. But I'm going to change these right here. These last ones. Now, what I was doing right there is I was just clicking on them to hear the chord play through the piano that's built inside of RapidComposer. And I'm kind of deciding, does this progression sound okay? And I'm also deciding that for the later videos where we're going to do in-depth tutorials, what is the rhythmic pattern we're going to do, right? Because I like this, like, you can really kind of get a feel of like, hey, I can stretch these out, make things longer and shorter, and basically have everything move to what I want. We'll focus that on a later video, but that's kind of like my idea of how I get to work with it. So next, we want to generate some chords, right? Well, on this top right section, we have this little hamburger that shows and hides the browser controls. And this is where we have our rhythms, scales, chords, progressions. We have everything here. And we can actually go into little sections and decide what we want. So in this case, maybe we want to have a chord generated. Now there's many options for importing chords. You can either drag it here and it'll spread it across the whole thing, or you drag it here and it just puts it in one section. The only thing I noticed is that some of these generated chord sections don't actually have an auto-generated section. Like the dyads and the figure picking is all generated. But there are some, like the arpeggiator and the chords, that are always quarter notes, are always the same arpeggiation. You just use the controls by right-clicking to kind of customize them. Now, what I like to do is actually double-click this, go into the phrase editor, select everything, and remove it. Now, keep in mind that this is a plugin version, so I don't have my hotkeys that I can normally use. But in that case, if you were using the standalone, you could use delete keys, you know, copy paste everything. This is just because I'm in a plugin, so it's kind of counteracting with my DAWs controls. But as you see, what I did right there is I went to the phrase editor, I deleted every note, I stretched this out, hit apply, and now that has created a 1-bar loop. Now, what you could do then is right-click, go to your generator section and save this. And that's actually what I've done here. Bar chords 1. I can now drag this over and I can have 1-bar chords. And now I can do things like customizing the octaves that are being hit. Ooh, that was perfect. Yeah, that sounds like it should be pretty okay. Next is our string section. Now, if we're in my normal session, you can see that I have a couple of virtual instruments selected. So the chords and the pianos, easy keys. I love easy keys. Contact is playing the Hyperion strings for my bass. Contact is doing my mallets. And then I have Spitfire Audio's Epic Strings. I love Spitfire Audio stuff. And we have Virtual Pianist here that's actually doing one of their progressions, so we could actually just hit the chords for this one, and it'll add some flavor. So this is kind of like an extra little special thing that I like to add to it. So for the strings, this is on MIDI channel 2. So what we're going to do is make sure that we have this on RapidComposer, MIDI input channel 2. And if you actually look here, you can see that we have a ridiculous amount of inputs. This is a lot. What is this, like? There's 128 channels, right? And that's allowing you to have 128 outputs on just channel 1. Because then we can go, you know, have instruments built in here, change the programming, do whatever we want, even add articulations. So I actually really like having orchestral articulations as well. And you see that there's actually some presets here for, you know, different type of articulations and groups. It's really cool. Very powerful piece of software. So for strings, what are we thinking? Well, maybe finger picking might be a good idea because these are supposed to be very staccato style strings. So we'll just click a couple times and we'll just take a listen. Pretty good, actually. But what if we want to have something else? Maybe a generic generator to make it a little bit more simple. Or what if we like that idea, but then we want to go ahead and add some flair every so often, right? We could very easily go into, what is it, a phrase container, right? These are a little simpler. We can throw that in here. And we have a pretty cool progression right there. I'm just going to right click and get rid of all these. And so let's see what we've done. So we've actually utilized generic generators and phrase containers. And we can actually go in here and really customize things. We can randomize things. That's not bad. We just hit apply, or we can change the rhythms, and you have lots of rhythmic options here, which are, honestly, most of them sound really good. But I like this slight, small progression that we've created. So we're going to copy and paste this by holding Control when I drag. I'm going to move this over. And now we have 4 bars, so we need to find 4 that we like. So I think we're going to go for like this. And let's take a listen. Pretty cool, but what if we're finding those keys to be a little annoying? I'm going to bring them down on my console 1 fader to make them less aggressive, right? But what if we want to change things? Well, we have lots of options. We have controls for the octaves, so we can transpose things. We can do expression control. We can do panning, volume control. I think we're going to bring this down an octave. And that sounds really good. And you guys have seen this in real time. I'm not doing any crazy edits. This took no effort. Next, we have mallets. Now, for mallets, I would say the percussion generator is one of the weakest portions in this software. And that's not me trying to say anything bad. It's just percussion is very difficult to do, especially with a random generator. I feel like percussion is definitely something that usually needs a little bit more tweaking and a little more control. So I think it would be great if there was maybe different styles added later on. But as of right now, I usually don't use the percussion generator, mostly because I'm always using Superior Drummer, and, you know, I have real drummers that I know. So for this, I might choose something just like a piano chord pattern, which, as you see, this one doesn't randomly generate like some of the other ones. So if we go to like random melodies and we click, it changes. But the piano runs and the piano chord generators are always the same, but they tend to sound pretty good with mallets. Right? Very nice and ethereal. And a cool thing about this is, let's say we don't want to make this just be a repeating loop. We can just cut things out and be like, you know what, for the first 4 bars, we have nothing. Then we add this in for 4 bars. We take it away for 2. And then we just let it roll for the rest. And now we have something that changes. And I did something else while I was playing that back. I was redoing and undoing some MIDI because I wanted to show you that you actually don't have any repercussions, unless you click on it, for redoing and undoing or editing stuff. It's done in real time seamlessly. I've actually noticed that in a lot of MIDI generation software, when you're doing edits and stuff, it actually will either stutter or stop, or it won't play back. This just keeps going, which is very, very good. So what I've done is I've created about half of the phrases up until the 8th bar with no percussion, and then the mallets come in. So next we have our bass. This one's kind of another one where I really feel like having more options would be available. But that's actually where I tend to use this generator section where we have bars and beats. So if you have it here, the default length of inserted phrase generator, beats is the time signature denominator. So if I do 16 beats and 1 bar, it's actually going to be a 16 beat loop. And this is where we can do more options. I dig things up to a certain extent. So if I double click on so this is where we have more options. I'm going to change the length of this to 12 beats, right? And I'm going to hit apply changes to phrase. You're going to see this is actually going to cut it down. And I'm seeing that, hey, that's not really what it should be. It should be maybe 13. So we're going to double click again. I'm going to hit play just because sometimes it does that. So let's do 13 beats. We'll hit apply. And now I can even get rid of that 1 extra beat. Cool. Now, if I remove this, we have a section that I dig. And that's about half the section. So now I can go ahead and do a quick little loop. There we go. And I can actually go in here and edit. You're noticing that when I double click, it's automatically playing. That is something that I find a little annoying. And it is something in the options where you can make it not do that. But I'm keeping it on because I want to hear the notes. This is F3. I'm going to change it and bring it down to F2. Right? And scroll over. I'm going to, again, it's pretty funny when you do it, but that. We're going to hit apply. And there we go. So the next step for me to do is drag this over here. Oh, and this is where we have a little bit of a mess. So I'm gonna remove this. Like I said, right click. This is just for your DAW, by the way. If you want to remove stuff, normally in the standalone version, you just delete it. This is just the case because I'm using it in my DAW. But now I do this and I have a nice progression. The next step that I think we need to do is let's add something else, something that's not from this. I want to trigger my virtual pianist, right? And we're going to name this piano. And that's just because virtual pianist has really cool little progressions. But a cool thing is you can actually import these or export things outside of this. So let's say I select my chords channel and hit Control click on the name. I can drag it into my session. And now those chords are not only named, but it has my expression controls and everything here. So now I can utilize this inside of a different piece of software. And we can really dial things in. And I can actually come in here and be like, hey, now I have an extra layer of depth that's doing a very similar orchestration. So I'm going to bring down the virtual piano. We're going to play this. We're going to mess with the mix. And that's it. I mean, quick and dirty. No actual thought was really done. Let's be honest. You guys saw this in real time. I promise I'm not doing any crazy edits. Any editing that was done was mostly just me getting rid of me fumbling words. But it sounds really good for something that took me almost no time, and it's really fast and efficient to work with. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. I think we've spent enough of your time. Now, as far as my opinions on this software, this is by far the best AI generation software I've used to date. As of now, this is the most comprehensive and powerful AI generation software. There are little things that I really wish would be added or changed or tweaked, and I did discuss that. I would think it'd be great if we could have multiple chord generator options, but we kind of do with generic generators and stuff like that. I feel like maybe a more revamped percussion generator would be even more amazing. But with what we have so far and with the tools that I have in my arsenal of software and hardware, I really don't feel like I'm lacking that much. I'm able to get a very decent sounding thing that might not sound like a professional orchestration, but is a decent demo to get started. And I can use what I have here and recreate and edit things how I see fit. Now, stay tuned because in the next video, we're going to be doing a review of this again, but for more electronic and synth music. So stay tuned for that. As far as my opinion goes right now, I would highly recommend grabbing a demo, checking out the tutorials that they have on their channel and that other people have. I'm going to be releasing tutorials on this software as well. But yeah, stay tuned. I really like this software, and I have to say, it might not look the nicest, but it's really good. I'm excited just thinking about how good this thing is, and I'm actually really hyped about doing the whole video series on it because this was easy. This was really easy, and I literally just did this on the fly. I had no script. It was cool. Anyway, this is Jeremy Within the DAW. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.